Why do we need a constitutional convention? Is another question somebody might ask to have facts about Open Ohio and the advocacy of State Issue 1. I believe that we need to have fair elections. At the statewide level, we have a reapportionment board which gerrymanders the districts to give a certain party, the Republican Party, a anti-democratic edge in elections by redrawing the reapportionment board. This is not to state that the Democrats would not do that if they were in power. The reapportionment board is controlled by the governor, the state auditor, and the secretary of state. It was rewritten last year, and there's two other members, but I believe those are guaranteed to be Republican and Democrat, so it's really the other three offices. On the local level in Columbus, Columbus City Council recently passed an issue called Issue 12, which made it so that they can meet in private to discuss who they're going to appoint to become city council people. So essentially it's made it a Democratic Party machine where there's no competitive elections. As the dispatch has shown in certain articles, pretty much all issues are almost always consensus at city council, so there's no real discussion, there's no real, dissent. So the election system in Ohio is terrible. Another reason we need election law reform and to take back our democracy is discussing Columbus State's political science professor's Bob Fitrakis' book, How the GOP Stole the 2004 Election. Now, in his book, he talks about how former Secretary of State Ken Blackwell did many things that call into question the legitimacy of the 2004 presidential election in Ohio. And all of those issues have barely been addressed. We need to address them, and we need to make sure that the right to vote is the most protected part of our Constitution. And currently we are failing on the state and local as well as federal level now. So we need election law reform. There are about 50 years left of oil at current estimates of production and consumption levels. Going along with that estimate, we need to make clear that that assumes that, first of all, no major new reserves are discovered. There's new oil reserves discovered every year, so obviously that number could go up. And secondly, it assumes that more gas-efficient means of using oil do not come about, such as using cars that require less oil. So we have about 50 years at current estimates. It could be upwards of 100 or 200 years, depending on what happens. But the fact of the matter is that oil is a scarce resource, and we will run out someday. Ohio is a great state, but there's so much sprawl. We're such an auto-dependent state, and there's nothing wrong with that. I love driving my car. I love suburbs. But we have to start thinking now about how people in Ohio are going to get across Ohio or get, across the world from Ohio or get to Ohio from across the world 100 years from now. How will people do that without oil? Ohio Department of Transportation, I feel, is not adequately investing in sustainable transportation practices. And I'm not trying to be some, environmentalists, advocating for green technology just for the sake of green technology. But the fact of the matter is we need to switch, and we need to switch soon. Not now, but we got to start working on it soon. And so I've included some resources on the website of a report that I did for the possible adoption of a new transportation technology called SkyTran, which is being worked on at NASA's Ames Research Facility in California. SkyTran is essentially personal rapid transit technology is what it's called, PRT, and it could go up to 140 miles per hour and cost about $9 million per mile. And so we're hoping that with State Issue 1 and rewriting the Constitution, we can get Ohio Department of Transportation to make serious investments into Ohio's future transportation needs, not just for today. We also need to reform our drug laws. The war on drugs has been a colossal failure. We have heroin, we have crack on the streets, as well as crystal meth. I remember when I was in high school, a kid at Thomas Worthington, a kid a year younger than me, overdosed on heroin. And I truly believe that if we address drug laws as an economic system of incentives, then we could actually take certain drugs off the street. And, it's not so much about taxes, but a lot of taxes could be generated through this program, as well as having a more humanized system. The fact of the matter of drugs or addiction, in any case, if you know anybody who's ever been addicted, is people have to choose to quit. And currently, people get incarcerated if they have problems with drugs, and then there's very little programs to help them, or very ineffective programs. And so we need to have a serious discussion of drugs. Finally, we also need marriage equality. People can have their own opinions of, whether or not homosexuality is okay or not. Personally, as a Christian, I subscribe to the allegory of Adam and Eve, and the reason I bring up Adam and Eve is the reason we were kicked out of the Garden of Eden is because God didn't want to force us to become what God wanted us to be. The whole point of life is choice, So even if people disagree with homosexuality, the fact of the matter is that the state should not be put in this role where it tells people how to live. And so what is the government doing on drug law reform? What is the General Assembly doing on drug law reform and fixing our election systems, if not supporting this election fraud on every level, as well as for marriage equality? It's all a big joke. Nothing's changing, because what it takes for stuff to change is it takes money. So that's my story. I think that this could be an effective way for social change, and that's why I'm pushing for State Issue 1, the call for a constitutional convention.